So, sorry for that. But I'm going to be doing predictions for every week. Um, and I thought about it because at least for this week, there's games today, tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday. And so every team plays in the next 2 days, and then every team plays in the next 2 days, and they like play against a different team, obviously. So everyone gets 2 matches per week. Um, so I'm going to do predictions for today's matches and tomorrow's matches. And then on Friday morning or like afternoon before the matches start, I'll upload predictions on the matches from Friday and Saturday. Because like what happens the next few days could factor in on how I feel about the other teams going forward. All right. So we have the first matchup: San Francisco Shock right here against the Los Angeles Valiant. So this is a really interesting matchup. I think it's a good matchup to start with the year with. They're two teams that are considered to be like mid tier teams, like good. They're not like in the top echelon, but they're definitely not in the bottom. So they're very good teams. And obviously, everyone in the league is a very good player. It's just some are better than others. Um, so we have the Valiant and the Shock. This one, there's 4 games in every match, so they play on 4 different maps. Um, if one team wins 3 out of the 4 or 4 out of the 4, then they win. If the team split 2-2, then they go into a tiebreaker for the 5th match. So how I think this one's gonna go down. The games, there's always they start with payload. There's a payload map. Then they go to a 2 capture point map. Then they do an assault map where you have to control the center zone. And then they do a hybrid map where you have to capture a point and then it goes to payload. So they have the maps that they're going to be on are Dorado, then Temple of Anubis, then Ilios, then Numbani. And Houston and LA are two really interesting teams because both of them have players that they couldn't use in the preseason. There was a preseason a month ago. It was a couple of days where all the teams got to play a couple matches and see what happened. And I think the Shock definitely surprised some people. And I'm not going to go for the easy pun. They surprised a lot of people with their performance. They performed better than people thought, and they're getting 2 of their better players back. So they're getting Sinatra, who is mainly a tracer player. He can also play Zarya and some other damage heroes. He's very good. He played for the U.S. in the World Cup. He performed poorly at the World Cup, but he's still a good player. He can still be one of the best tracers out there. And they're also getting Super back, who is also one of their better players, because they couldn't play in the preseason because they were too young. But now they're available. So I think that makes the Shock even better than they looked in the preseason. And then the Valiant, they're also getting somebody back that was too young for the preseason. That's Agilities. He is definitely top 5, probably top 3 Genjis in the whole world, Genji players. He's insanely good on Genji. And he can also play he can play a really good Pharah. And there's other damage as well. So bringing him in is very good for them. It's going to strengthen their team a lot. So you got 2 teams that are they're pretty good. I'd say they're pretty evenly matched. They're both getting players back that they didn't have before. But that also means that there might, like, obviously they've had time to practice together, but that means that there might be some might be a little period of them trying to gel together actually on stage. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup. I think I have the Valiant winning this one. I think the Valiant will take map 1. Or no, sorry, I think the Shock will take game 1 because they look really good on payload maps before. Then I think the Valiant will take game 2 pretty easily. They look really solid on 2 capture points. Then the third one will be close, but I got the Valiant on top there. And then I think the Valiant will actually close it out in game 4. I think they'll lose the first one and then win the last 3. They'll definitely be close. I'm definitely going to try to watch this matchup. So I got the Valiant 3-1, match 1. That's these 2. So match 2 then actually has my favorite team in it. It is the Shanghai Dragons versus Here's Shanghai over here versus the Gladiators. The Gladiators are my team. Um, so this is another matchup of two teams that are towards the middle. They're both ranked below the Shock and the Valiant. Gladiators, most people rank them a little bit above the Dragons. The Dragons had a pretty poor performance in the preseason. They lost both of their games. One to the Uprising, who a lot of people thought they would beat. The Gladiators won against Spitfire, which was a big upset. The London Spitfire over here, and then they lost to the Valiant. So I think in this one, again, I think this match could be close. I like the Gladiators, though. I might be a little biased here, but I think that they're the better team. Um, Map 1 or the maps that they're going to be on. They got Dorado, Temple of Anubis, Ilios, and Eichenwald. So similar, the exact same as match 1 except for map 4. They're on Eichenwald instead of Numbani. So map 1, Gladiators have looked really good on payload maps. I think they'll win the first. Then the second could go either way. I think the Dragons will win that one. Map 3, the Gladiators have been a bit weak on the control points, or the assault maps. That's actually not assault. The ones like Ilios style, where you have to capture one zone in the middle. I always forget the formal names for them. They're kind of confusing, honestly. We just call them like 2CP, hybrid, blah blah blah, payload. But I think the Gladiators will edge that one out. I think games 2 and 3 will be really close. But then it'll be 2-1 Gladiators, and I think they'll clean up on Eichenwald. So Gladiators 3-1. Another 3-1 matchup. I could see them tying 2-2 and having to go to a tiebreaker. But I think the Gladiators will pull this one out. Some standout players for them. They have Surefour, who's a very good and versatile DPS player. He's probably I'd say he's their best player. They have Asher, a South Korean damage player who mostly plays Tracer and McCree. Very good on those heroes. So you always have to watch out for him too. They have Hydration, who's a very good Genji and Pharah. So they have a lot of good damage there. And their supports kind of surprised me in the preseason. They were performed better than I thought. Especially Big Goose, who I hadn't heard of much from. But I like his playing style. So, the Gladiators, we'll see. Shanghai just kind of they were definitely the team in the preseason that underperformed the most. A lot of people were kind of disappointed with them. So we'll see if they come out stronger in the first week of the season rather than in the preseason. So Gladiators 3-1 in the second match. First match, Shock or Valiant 3-1 over the Shock. But both of these matches I think are going to be close and good. And that brings us to the final match of the day, Dallas Fuel and the Seoul Dynasty. So you know how I said that the other 4 teams that were playing earlier in the day, they were all like middle of the road teams. Like most, I'd say Valiant's about like 5th in the power rankings, and Shock is like 6 or 7. Gladiators are about 8, and then Shanghai is like 9 or 10. These are 2 of the top teams. A lot of people have Dallas as the 2 or 3 best team, and pretty much everyone has Dynasty as the number 1 team. They are mostly, not all, but most of their players were on the South Korean World Cup Overwatch team, which won the World Cup this past year and the year before. So pretty much the best team against one of the best teams. The Fuel are basically, they're made of their team is mostly what was formerly another pro team, which was Envious. So the players have really good chemistry and synergy together. They play well together, and they're really familiar with each other, which is a big boost for them. The same thing applies to Dynasty though. They also have very good chemistry. So this will be a close match. Dynasty won pretty easily both of their matches in the preseason. The Fuel beat Outlaws, the Houston Outlaws, their Texas rivals, and then they lost to they beat the Mayhem. They went 2-0 as well. They looked they didn't look as great as they normally do, but they were also trying a lot of things out. Like they were trying up some strange comps just to kind of experiment because it was the preseason. So this is going to be a really good game. I'm excited for this one. I'm probably more excited for Gladiators just because I cheer for them, but this game is going to be really good too. Their maps, they have Junkertown, game 1, Temple of Anubis 2, Ilios 3, and then Numbani 4. So Junkertown is going to be interesting, the first map, because the Fuel and the Dynasty both looked pretty beatable on this map in the preseason. The Dynasty lost to New York on this map, and the Fuel got crushed by Mayhem on this map, which was pretty surprising. Um, they went on to win the next 3 maps, but they didn't look great on this. I think I think that the Fuel actually win this because the Dynasty the Dynasty and like the Spitfire, some of the mostly like the teams that are made of all South Koreans, they like obviously they're insanely good at the game, but they tend to struggle with like comps with like the Bastion strat because on Junkertown you want to get a Bastion on the payload, you want to get barriers for him, you want to have a Mercy healing it slash damage boosting him, and then fill in with some other heroes that help out that comp. And some of the South Korean teams just haven't really been able to implement a good strategy on these maps. So I think Fuel comes out. I think they probably put Taimu on the payload with the Bastion. I'm gonna guess. He's one of their better players. The Fuel are loaded with superstars. They have the very popular streamer Seagull, another popular streamer XQC. They have Taimu, who's an extremely good damage player. They have Effect, one of the top tracers in the world, if not the top tracer. I'd probably put him as like 3, maybe 2. He's up there. Um, then, but Seoul they have the best. I think the best probably overall player, like overall Overwatch player in the world in Jaehong. He's one of their. He plays pretty much Ana and Zen, and he's insanely good at both of them. They have pretty much the best Winston in the world as Miro, and they have a bunch. They just have a ton of talent. Um, so I think that game 2, that's going to be an interesting one. Temple of Anubis, it could really go. This one's kind of a coin flip for me, honestly. I think that since the Fuel win game 1, I think Dynasty take game 2. They think they're gonna pull it off. They're gonna get to 1-1. I don't see the Dynasty going down 0-2. Then Ilios, I actually have the Fuel. I like them a lot on the one attacking the 1 point in the center maps. They've shown that might be their best game, like their best game mode. At least from what I've watched from them, they perform really well in those. So I think it'll be pretty close. And the Dynasty and the team that they used to have never been that great on these maps. And I think that's an advantage for the Fuel, and I think they're going to win in a close game. I don't think it'll be a blowout. I don't think any of these will be blowouts, but I think that the Fuel will take game 3 and take a 2-1 lead. Then Numbani, I got Dynasty easily. They're down 1-2. They're not going to lose their first match of the season. Numbani is a great map for them. I think they win pretty easily on this one to make it 2-2. And then they'll go to a tiebreaker. I don't know what map it would be. It's usually one where you attack the center again. And even though I said that I give the Fuel an advantage on those kind of maps, I still got the Dynasty. I think that at this point in the season, they're too good. They're too far above everyone else right now, and I think they take that win. I think the Dynasty in 5. It's gonna be a really good game, a really good match though. I think the Fuel didn't look as great in the preseason, but I think they're gonna come out with a lot of energy and play really well. So to recap real quick, first match I got Valiant 3-1 over the Shock. Second match I got Gladiators 3-1 over the Dragons. Game 3 I got Dynasty 3-2 over the Fuel. So those are my predictions for the first 2 days. Then obviously the next, or sorry, that's just the first day. I gotta move on to the second day. I'm gonna start moving a little quicker for these. I've been rambling a little bit. So you see that was all because there's 2 divisions. These are all the teams in this division playing each other, and then there's the other division, which I think I forget which division is which. Like it's like Atlantic and something else. But I think this division, the one that I haven't talked about yet, is a lot weaker than the other one. So this one we got the London Spitfire against the Florida Mayhem. And again, sorry if I'm not responding to stuff in the chat. I'm doing this as a video, so I'm just uploading it to YouTube right after this. After I'm done, I'll probably answer any questions that are there. Um, but anyway, Spitfire against Mayhem. The Mayhem were pretty much the worst team, most people would say, in the preseason. They only have 6 people on their roster, which obviously you need 6 people to play Overwatch, but everyone else has more than 6. I think the only team that has, like, the Gladiators only have 7. They're a bit like weaker too in terms of just numbers of their team, but a lot of them, like the Spitfire of 12, the Dynasty of 11, I think. Fuel has 9. The Valiant have 10 at least. So a lot of the teams have a lot more than 6 people, but they only have 6, so they can't sub anybody out. I think it's a huge disadvantage for them, and they haven't played that well. So I think that in the Spitfire, most people agree that they're probably the second team talent wise. They also used to be a team together. They were called Kangdu Panthera, and they would battle with the Dynasty, who used to be Lunatic High. So they're up there. I think they're a little bit more inconsistent, definitely, than the Dynasty, but they, in terms of like raw talent and ability, they're right up there with the top. So their games are Dorado, Temple, Oasis, and Numbani. Honestly, Spitfire win easily all of the games. I'm gonna be this one is there's probably the least amount to talk to about this matchup. Easy 4-0 for the Spitfire, I think. There'll probably be times when the Mayhem will like take advantage on a map a little bit and push the Spitfire, but then the Spitfire will be like, oh yeah, we gotta play, and then they'll bring it back and eventually win every map. They have some of the players that they have are just insane. Like they have the one standout that I'm just gonna talk about real quickly is Bergering. From what I've watched of him the last few months, I think he's #1 Tracer right now. If I had to say, if I was forced to pick, I'd say he's #1 and Effect is #2. Because there are some games when he doesn't die, and he goes in and he just, that's a target, they're dead. That's a target, they're dead, and he's just going back and forth, and the enemy team just can't do anything about it. So when you have a player of that caliber, plus everyone else on the team is extremely good, they can't like devote too much attention to him, or the rest of the Spitfire will rip the team apart. So yeah, I think that the Spitfire win this one, no problem. And that's pretty much that for that game. There's not a whole lot to say. The next one is one that's hard to predict. We have the Houston Outlaws against the Philadelphia Fusion. And this one's interesting because the Philadelphia Fusion did not play in the preseason. I don't remember why, but they did not play in the preseason at all. I don't know if it was some like rules kind of thing, or if they didn't have enough players because they had some like ineligible guys. I don't think it was that. But the Fusion they have a decent amount of players that used to be on the team FaZe, a former pro team. So they have a solid amount of camaraderie. They have probably the it's so hard to rank these guys because they're all so good, but they have a top 5, probably top 3 Genji in the world, again, like agilities in his name's Shadowburn. If you know Overwatch, you've probably heard of Shadowburn. Insanely good Genji. He alone gives your team a chance. But the Outlaws, they lost both of their games in the preseason, but they also played against the Fuel and the Dynasty, who, if you remember, are 2 of the top 3 in this whole league. And they played Dallas really closely. They lost 3-2. They lost 3-1 to the Dynasty. They put up a pretty solid fight against them, all things considered. The Outlaws have Jake, who's an outstanding damage player, and he played for Team USA in the World Cup. Had a really good performance there. He's a really good and versatile DPS player. Kind of, I would equate him a little bit to Surefour because he can play Tracer really well. He can play Genji. He can play Soldier. He can play Junkrat. He can play McCree, Pharah. Sometimes he's really, really versatile. That's great for them. Their other damage player is arguably even better. His name's Linkser. He's from oh shoot, I don't want to mess this up. I'm pretty sure it's Finland. Pretty sure he's Finnish. And he insane Genji and one of the best Widows I've seen. his Widow shot is just on point, and it doesn't matter what the enemy team does because their damage dealers and their healers, they're just gonna die. Come off. So I think this will be a close game. They have Dorado, Horizon Lunar Colony, Oasis, and Eichenwald. I think that this one, because the Fusion haven't had a chance to perform in front of everyone yet together, I think Outlaws take advantage. They take game 1. I think they take game 2. And I think the Fusion will come back and get 3. But in a very close game 4, it's the Outlaws. I got the Outlaws in 4 just because they had the preseason to get ready. And I haven't really seen the Fusion yet, so I don't know how they're going to mesh together. But the Fusion could be a solid team. They have some good players. Like they got Joe Meister, who's a good support player. He was also on Team USA. But the Outlaws have a lot of good players. They have the damages that I talked about. They have good tanks. Cool Matt is a very good diva, and their supports are good as well. And sorry if I'm focusing on the DPS players a little bit. I just know them a little better. I think as the season goes on and like as I do a bit more research into it, I'll talk about the healers and tanks a bit more. So then our last match of the day, Boston versus New York. So the Uprising, the New York is, a lot of people would consider them probably 4th or 5th best in the world. They have Sabioli, who is I'd probably put him at number 4 tracer in the world right now, 4 or 5. He played for South Korea in the World Cup. He was amazing. He was a large portion of why they won. Against the U.S. in particular. That was a really good match. But outstanding Tracer player. I haven't really seen him on other heroes much, but he plays Tracer very well. They also have Pine, his name is. Insane on the Widow. Very good Pharah as well. So they and also they have some really good tanks like Mono, who's a great Reinhardt and Winston player. A lot of talent on that team. I'd say their talent is pretty much not quite there, but it's up there with the Spitfire and the Dynasty and the Fuel. The Boston Uprising, very young team. A lot of people that you've never really heard of are on that team. A lot of people came into the preseason thinking they're going to be the worst team by a pretty decent margin, but they've been pretty good this year, or at least in the preseason. They surprised me at least. They're not going to be in the upper tier of teams, but I think they'll compete. They'll compete with teams. I don't think they'll be as bad as people envision them at the beginning of the year. They have Uprising. Some of the standouts that I saw in the preseason, Neko on the mostly playing Zenyatta. Who I love Zenyatta. He's one of my favorite characters. So seeing somebody play Zenyatta well makes me happy. He had a good performance. And then Dream Casper, who he's been around for a while, very good damage player. He had an insanely good preseason. He was just keeping the team in games by himself sometimes. Mostly on the Genji, but he can play a lot of pretty much all the DPS heroes that you see in pro play. He can do. That being said, though, they got Junkertown, they got Horizon, Ilios, and Numbani. Excelsior take game 1. Excelsior take game 2. I think it'll be very close, but Excelsior squeak out game 3, and then Excelsior close it out on Numbani. I think they 4-0 them. But I think that the Boston Uprising will keep at least a couple of the games very close. I think that they'll put up a fight, but they'll eventually lose 4-0. So to recap this day, I've got the Spitfire, easy 4-0 against the Mayhem. Outlaws, 3-1 over the Fusion. And Excelsior, 4-0 on the Uprising. So I think I'll keep track of like how many I get right. I won't say like the exact score, doesn't matter. Like if the Valiant win 3-2 instead of 3-1 or whatever, that's fine. I think I'll keep track just for fun to see how I do. And then on Friday I'll be back previewing the second 2 days of the first week, if that makes sense. All right, so I hope you enjoyed. I have fun doing this. I haven't done a lot of research for this week, but I think I will more going forward. Like seeing some of the team strategies, and it'll be easier to predict after like there've actually been games too. This is again the first week of real competition, so I'm super excited for it. I hope you're excited too. Look into Overwatch League if you haven't yet. Gonna be a lot of fun. I know I'm a Gladiators fan. I have another friend who's a Gladiators fan. Um, we got one that's a Fuel fan. We got one that likes LA. We've got an Outlaws guy. We've got a Spitfire fan. So it's gonna be fun. I am excited for today. That's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you again at least on Friday with more Overwatch League predictions.